Kyle. I also wanted to mention that Aaron Paul is from. Aaron Paul, Breaking Bad. Anybody see this? Okay, yeah. He was my student, one of my high school students. Yes, I had him for sophomore and junior English. So, just to mention another famous person from my little hometown, Aaron Paul. Keep that in mind. My book is, as you can probably guess from the title, is about a highly religious family. And in this case, there are 5 members of this family, 3 daughters, 2 parents. The oldest daughter is incredibly devout, strangely hyper-religious, and she goes off on an evangelical mission to Mexico and comes back home early, and her parents don't know why, and they find out that she's pregnant. But the worst is yet to come. So I'm going to read a little section in which the family hears the very worst that they can imagine. So this is a rather integral scene in the novel. And the oldest daughter's name is appropriately Grace. The middle daughter, who is more rebellious, her name is Jory. And the youngest daughter, who's quite young, is named Frances. And they're all sitting around the dinner table. Their father has just gotten back from Mexico, where he's gone to try to find out what happened to his oldest teenage daughter while she was there, and he's just gotten back. This is the first time they've seen each other as a family for a couple weeks. That night at dinner, the 5 of them sat around the maple table in the way they always had, as if nothing had happened, as if they had just imagined the past 3 weeks and their strange in-house vacation. Their father fixed his gaze on each of them in turn and smiled. "Here are my 3 lovely daughters," he said. "Here we are," said Jory. Their mother was rubbing her temples with both hands. "Well," said their father, "what are we all doing after dinner? Frances, what do you have planned for this evening?" "I'm riding my bike," said Frances. Very good," said their father. "Jory, what about you?" Jory shrugged. "I don't know, reading, I guess." "All right, how about you 2 other ladies?" Their father smiled brightly at Grace and their mother. "How does a walk down to Albertsons for some ice cream sound to you 2? Grace pushed her mashed potatoes from one side of her plate to the other. "I'm afraid ice cream makes me sick." "That's it." Their mother threw her napkin onto the table and screeched her chair back from the table. She stood looking at all of them. "I can't do this. I can't." She turned and looked at Grace. "Just tell me who it was, Grace. Just tell me who it was so he can do something. Who was it? Who was it? Who was it?" "Esther." Their father stretched his hand out toward their mother, but she stepped out of his reach. "Esther," he said again. "It was an angel," said Grace, looking up for the first time. "An angel with dark hair." No one said anything. Frances switched her gaze from her mother to Grace. "Angels have yellow hair," she said, like curled taffy." Their mother sank back down into her chair. "He said that you wouldn't understand." Grace's eyes seemed to come alive for the first time since she'd been home. "He said I shouldn't tell anyone because no one would believe it. No one ever believes. Jesus, John the Baptist, Elizabeth, Mary, no one ever believed them at first, did they? Even Jesus' own parents didn't recognize him. There's no point in discussing this because you couldn't possibly understand what's happened to me. It's beyond your ability to comprehend." Grace leaned forward, the skin of her face ablaze as if radiating some kind of internal heat. Jory had never seen her look like this, except for the time years ago when she'd come home from junior church and said that she was now saved. "Grace," her father's voice was quiet, "we very much want to understand." Their mother had her eyes closed tight and her hand over her mouth. "Help us to understand this," her father said in the same quiet voice. Jory recognized it as the voice he used on dogs he wasn't sure wouldn't bite. Grace folded her hands and rested them on the table. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "It was given to me. It was a thing that was given to me alone, and I alone am to bear it." Their mother made a soft gasping noise behind her hand. Grace seemed not to notice their mother. She smoothed the tablecloth where it wasn't lying flat. "I said yes to Jesus long ago, so how could I possibly say no now?" She looked up. "Aren't we always supposed to say yes to God, Dad?" "Well," said her father. He picked up his fork and put it down again. He cleared his throat. "Yes, of course we should say yes to God. But first we have to be sure that it is indeed God who's making the request." He spoke quite slowly and seemed to be considering each of his words before he let them out of his mouth. Wouldn't God always have our best interests at heart? Grace leaned forward. Did it seem like he had Abraham's best interests at heart when he asked him to sacrifice Isaac? Or how about Jesus? Do you think it seemed like God always had Jesus' best interests at heart? "This isn't a theological discussion." Their mother raised her voice. "You are having a baby, and it isn't God's." Frances put her glass of milk back down. "Grace is having a baby?" Her entire face lit up. "Is it a girl?" "None of you have any idea what you're saying." Grace's voice was shaking. "I knew it would be like this. I never even wanted to come home from Mexico. At least there I felt good about my calling, about what I've been called to do. Here I'm surrounded by people whose minds are too small to accept anything other than what the newspaper or the television or, excuse me, the science books tell them." "What?" their mother said. "Grace," their father said. "You went to Mexico to spy on me." Grace's mouth grew tight. "You went to see what I'd been up to, but what you didn't realize is that you wouldn't find anything, because what you were looking for is from man, and what you see in front of you is from God." For a moment, Grace seemed about to say something more. Instead, she closed her mouth, pushed her chair back, stood up, and walked out of the room. Their mother had both of her hands over her eyes as if to blind herself to the situation. She shook her head back and forth. "No," she said. No, this isn't happening. Now let's stay calm." Their father ran his hand through his hair. "Let's just stay calm and think for a minute." Their mother made a horrible animal-like sound deep in her chest and sank back down in her chair. She seemed to slowly deflate and grow small, her shoulders rounding and hunching forward until her head was hanging just above her plate of uneaten food. She began to sob in an unguarded way that Jory had never heard before. Their father's eyes shifted around the table. His glance fell on Jory. "You two go outside and play. Now." "Mom," said Jory. Her father gave her a look. "I mean it, Jory. Just do what I tell you to." Jory stood up from the table. "For Pete's sake," she said. "For Pete's sake!" Even now, it was the worst thing she was allowed to say.